So this is the first, well, I guess it's day 2 of my new process. Sorry, it kind of looks like I just woke up. Day 2 of my new process on content, and after a fail yesterday that included audio and video issues, I'm back up and running today. So that's good. It's a good feeling. So the thing that I wanted to walk through today is I last week I had seen a couple of these kind of posts. You've probably seen them too. One that essentially was saying email is dead, and another that has said email is not dead, right? And I see those all the time, and I wanted to break them down a little bit. So I'm actually going to do both, and I'm going to, instead of getting like a little sensational about it either way and being all passionate that one or the other is true, I want to break down the principles of what I think is behind both of those from my point of view. And we're all doing email marketing whether we think it's dead or not, and I think knowing the principles of both of these is a good idea. Okay, so let's start with the reasons why email is dead. So the first one the main one that I see is that what we'll say number one is that the newer generation, Gen Z, whatever you want to call them, they really don't like it. It's not fast enough, I think, for them. They definitely, I think, if you've grown up with email, sometimes those threads and messages can be really long. Like people write epistles sometimes in those emails as they're trying to explain their point of view, and that's a lot to take in sometimes. I just think Gen Z, those people, I don't know, maybe I should ask them more directly, but I've seen some things online that lead me to believe that they don't like it too much. So if that's the case, and there's a generational kind of shift to the point where they just won't use it, then maybe it could die out. Reason number 2 is that it's noisy, so it's hard to stand out. This isn't like a new point of view. Everybody knows it. The inbox is crowded, and so because of that, you have to be really good in order to get any kind of decent, above average open rates. And if you look at benchmarks and stuff, they vary by industry. It's hard to tell what's accurate anymore because you've got more mail clients that are blocking images within emails or not going to send back open data at all, that kind of stuff. And so it's really hard to know, quite honestly, what open rates are. But regardless, we know that the traffic's busy, which means it's hard to stand out. Related to this, related to point number 1 for point number 3. Inbox 0 is really hard to get. Have you seen those screenshots of people that have 10,000 messages out and they haven't read, that are unread? Which, by the way, if you do, you're never going to get to them. Just mark them all read, please, for your own sanity. That little notification bubble that says you still have 10,000 messages to read brings a lot of guilt to people. And so I think, tied to reason one of people just don't like it. Excuse me. Then they don't want to deal with that guilt. And sometimes they'll just leave it, and then it just grows and grows and grows because it's so hard to get, and they feel like they got to read every one. So that guilt would be driving people away. The last 2 are kind of related as well. So number 4, you get forced into messages that you can't get out of. So what I'm thinking of here are long threads at work that along the line someone decides to copy you into them, and then you're stuck. You can't pull yourself out of that thread unless you convince whoever the next reply is to pull you out. And so I would imagine you've all been in threads that, you didn't have to respond to, but they just keep, like, they're highly active, and sometimes they're, like, really long messages. So you don't want to miss something that might be relevant to you, and then you spend, 20 minutes reading through the whole thread that you had to catch up on, and it's not about anything you're doing. So that's another reason. And then the last one is that you get forced into messages that you didn't opt into. Now, with government regulations going more like privacy-enabled, consumer-focused stuff, this is theoretically going to be less of an issue. But I still get loads of messages from brands that I know I never opted into. So they purchased my info somewhere. And then decided that it was valuable enough to send me a message. So typically those get either moved to junk or spam, or at the very, very least unsubscribed, if I actually take the time to do that. And so the inbox is the easiest for people to get themselves into, which is why it's so noisy. All right. Have those convinced you the email is dead? If those have, let's look at the other side and see why it's not. Okay, reason number one, email is the most highly curatable channel out there. So, in spite of being forced into messages that you didn't opt in to receive, I think as we trend that there's going to be more regulation around that. You can curate your inbox to exactly what you need it to be. For everything that you don't want to see more, if you just mark it as spam and get rid of it, like, you won't see it anymore. And it's a lot harder to do that with, like, social feeds. You can follow the people that you want to see, but then especially with people, like, their stuff is all over the place, and a lot of times you'll see, like, posts that they just interacted with that weren't necessarily the stuff that you wanted to follow. So when it comes to curating the content that you want to see, nothing is more flexible than email. Being able to create folders, filters that drive those messages into certain folders. I mean, a lot of us probably don't take the time to get in that depth, but if you wanted to, there are so many options to do it with. Number two, there are this is more of like looking at others and the work they're doing, but there are whole businesses built on email newsletters, and that's all they do, right? Like, their main product is sending out an email, and thinking of like the Morning Brew, and there's several others that just tend to kill it. So if they've built entire businesses just on creating a really worthwhile newsletter, clearly it's not dead. People are signing up, people are receiving it, they're engaging and consuming the content, and they've built a business off that. So that tells me that if your email isn't working, then the delivery and the content just isn't good enough, right? So it still works. Reason number three, people are willing to give an email address for something. So I can't count the number of times that I knew it was like, okay, this is like a one-time thing. I'm going to make a purchase. It's worth it to me to sign up for the newsletter that I'll maybe unsubscribe from immediately, or maybe the brand's okay, and they promise a discount if I sign up for the newsletter. I've done that all the time. I've signed up for brands too, hoping to get like promotions, so I don't actually really read the messages. I just like use it as a ticker to keep track of like promotions, and eventually one might hit that like I was looking for. So an offer is a really easy example. I think there's some others, but people will be willing to give up an email if they get something of value in return. For best, email is one of the best ways for distributing content. So if you do it right, I mean, think of like these businesses that have built themselves wholly on newsletters. When you post links and algorithms on social media, for example, you get penalized for putting the link in there. And that's because the social media site doesn't want you leaving. They just don't want you leaving. Up to this point, email has not seen that kind of level of oversight is in the content that they've created. Like, all emails include loads of links, and that's part of the whole purpose. So if you have an engaged audience in email, and you're trying to drive experiences in other places, it's one of the best distribution channels because you're not going to be penalized for putting stuff like links in it. So it's distribution that's a really good thing with email. And fifth point is that it's the most personalized channel of any channels out there. From an automated point of view, you have more access to an email database than anywhere else that can then deliver content for the people that you're sending it to. And you just can't do that with social. You really can't do that as well with your website. But with email you can. And I think people still yearn for that. They like the personalization. And email still has an edge on top of every other channel in that regard. All right, so those are the principles. I hope you enjoyed them. And give me your thoughts on whether you agree or not. Take care.